my name's Dayana. I am from Florida International University. My major is international relations, and I went to Kansai University in Osaka, Japan.
Okay, Diana, can you tell us why you decided to do a study abroad program?
Well, I mean, initially, the reason I wanted to do study abroad was to gain a little bit more proficiency in Japanese. I wanted to do a very international, career in the future, so I thought, going to Asia and Japan would be the perfect thing for me. I've always loved the language, so I thought that, the culture and all that would be so easy to kind of assimilate to, so that's why I wanted to go abroad.
Great. And can you tell us if you had any what were you hesitant about with regards to the study abroad process? Like what kind of fears did you have?
Okay, well, I mean, at first, I saw the process and how long it was because there was so much paperwork to be done. There was paperwork for both the study abroad office and my home, like the institution that I'll be going to. There was so much planning involved, and it was hours and hours of planning that I had to do and make sure everything was right. So that kind of intimidated me at first. But I feel like here, especially at my home institution, it was something that they kind of took you by the hand and gave you step by step help with everything. And another thing that made me a little bit hesitant to do the study abroad itself was money. I'm a college student, so it was very, very difficult to find funding. Since I was like going to class full time, it was very hard to raise money on my own. So in the end, what I did was that I did GoFundMe. I went to this website called GoFundMe, and it was a crowdfunding website that you sent the link out to your friends, and they kind of give you a little bit of support, a little bit of money for your study abroad. And I think that ended up paying my plane ticket in full, so that was amazing. And I also got the Gilman Scholarship,
Great.
and that helped me quite a lot with living expenses as well.
That's great. So you went to Japan for your study abroad. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about your experience there? Like, what was the most memorable thing to you, or how would you describe your experience at that school and in that city, in that country overall?
Yeah, well, I mean, at first I was a little bit nervous because, I wouldn't know anyone there. I was pretty much the only one in my university that was going at the time because the only other person I wasn't going to see at all. So it was difficult because I didn't know how well I would assimilate to the culture and, how I would do living on my own and being, independent. But I felt like they had so many resources at Kansai Gaidai. They had this office called the CIE. And what they did was that, they worked only for the international students, and, they helped you tremendously. They helped you, get translators if you needed to go to the hospital. They helped you kind of find clubs or organizations that you could, fit into, and you can, practice your Japanese with some of the students. I thought it was, incredibly helpful, and it was so nice. But for me, I think that what stood out the most was, the incredible hospitality of the people. When I went, everyone was so nice and so kind, and whenever I would go out and I would talk to someone in Japanese, they would get so excited and so happy and they would try their best to help me. And I met my speaking partner at Kansai Gaidai. It was one of the programs that they had, and my speaking partner was absolutely amazing. She took me around. She showed me how to use the train system. So much. She introduced me to her family, and I went to sleep over her house for a weekend, and they were so hospitable, and I ended up thinking there was nothing for me to worry about because they were so kind and so nice, and I was able to kind of get used to the cultural differences after a while, so
Great.
it was good.
That sounds like a great experience. Were there any moments for you that stood out, like in terms of how you self-identify? So were there any sort of issues where you felt like people treated you differently because of your racial ethnic background or because of your gender, things like that?
There was one. It's actually two. The first one was I was in the Hirakata train station, and we're getting ready to take the bus back to our seminar house where we lived. And I was with another friend. She was British, and you can tell that we're not Japanese. Like we kind of stood out because we were kind of like in a crowd of Japanese people, and there was actually a group of, teenage guys sitting behind us, and after a while we started realizing that, we couldn't really understand the Japanese very well because it was very colloquial and it was Kansai Ben, so we couldn't really understand very well, but after a while you realize that, they were kind of poking at us and they were kind of like wanting to get our attention, and it made us feel really uncomfortable in the sense that it wasn't very friendly. After all, we started to realize that it was more like, making fun of the gaijin or the foreigners that were around. So that was definitely something that made me uncomfortable. And, Japan is very homogeneous. They don't get a lot of international students generally. So I think that a lot of times it's not that, they want to make fun or anything. It's more like, they're not as culturally sensitive yet. So, they really don't know how to act around some people sometimes. I know that I spent an entire month there, and I would see people in my neighborhood several times, yet they still stared, the entire time. After 4 months, they would still stare. And, the second instance that I felt that was, it was a little harsher because we were in the train. We were going maybe to a mall nearby in Osaka, and, I was with a friend that was from Hong Kong. Also, you can tell that she's not Japanese, and 3 other international students, one from Canada, England, America, and there was a lady sitting in the train, and she was looking at us, and she was more like glaring at us. And you could tell that she was just genuinely upset that we were there, and that, we were here, and I think she might have, said something in Japanese that was very offensive. So I mean, that's something that didn't happen very often at all. And I didn't see a lot of xenophobia in Japan, to be completely honest with you. But those things would come up every once in a while,
Do you feel like there was a support system for you, either with your peers or your teachers, or people that just kind of like help you through that? Or did you feel like it really like negatively impacted your overall experience?
It didn't really negatively impact my experience because, it happens so little, and I feel like things like this happen in America all the time as well. I feel like, you're so exposed to that here that I didn't feel like it was something unique to Japan in that sense. So, no, I had friends that would go through the same thing, especially, the girls that were from Europe. They were really, really tall and blonde, and whoa, they stood out a lot more than we did. They would tell us the same stories, and, we would just laugh about it. It's fine. It happens. And I definitely feel like my friends were definitely a support system when it came to that.
Great.
So, yeah.
Great. That's good to hear. Can you tell us a little bit about what you feel you may have gained personally or professionally or academically while you were in Japan that you don't think you would necessarily have learned if you had stayed for the semester here at FIU?
Well, I mean, definitely when it comes to the Japanese culture, I feel like I learned to be a little bit more sensitive to them and a lot of the traditions that they hold. I remember the first time I went into my speaking partner's house, I walked in with my shoes on, and she almost had a heart attack. But, they were so kind in helping me kind of get used to that. And there were a lot of little, subtleties, like when you're out on the street, people aren't really as friendly as here. I think if you were to just randomly say hi to someone on the street, they probably wouldn't answer back because that's just their culture. It's just the way they are. And I think I learned to be culturally sensitive as well as, I learned to be a lot more independent abroad. I just didn't realize how sheltered I was here because I do live with my parents, and, I've always lived in this, safe little bubble. And when I went to Japan, it was just completely different. I had to learn how to budget. I had to learn, how to cook for my own with ingredients that I had no idea what they meant because the kanji was, or the Japanese writing was completely indecipherable for me at first. But I think little by little, it helped me out. Everything, it kind of worked out in the end. So I feel like I learned so much in so little time, and it's because it was so intensive being there for so long.
Great. Yeah. No, I think I personally can relate to that a lot. So my last question for you is, what advice would you give to students who are interested in going abroad, but maybe are a little bit hesitant or have some of the same fears that you earlier addressed? Like, what would your advice be to them?
Well, I mean, when it comes to, all the work that, you have to do in order to study abroad, I think that, it's a lot of scholarships, a lot of essays to write, a lot of paperwork, but in the end, what you get back from studying abroad and, all the experiences and the opportunities that open up for you is completely priceless. It's something that you can't get anywhere else, and I mean, you're going to be so happy that you went abroad, so definitely. When it comes to money, there are always scholarships available. The Gilman Scholarship, the Boren, the Fulbright, the CLS, all these scholarships are for American citizens, and I mean, I wouldn't hesitate to apply, no matter, what your reserves are. Also, I like to tell everyone that Google was my best friend when I was studying abroad, so just Google study abroad programs or study abroad, scholarships, and you should be able to find something. It's not impossible.
Or use diversity abroad.
Or use diversity abroad. And they have all of the scholarships listed as well. So.
Thank you, Dayana.